At this hour, the G7 summit is officially underway in Canada, and U.S. President Donald Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney are now taking part in a bilateral meeting on the sidelines. Now, before that conversation started, Trump criticized the G7 for ejecting Russia 11 years earlier after Moscow annexed Crimea. The leaders of the G7 countries, which also include France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the UK, have a lot to discuss over the next few days. High on the agenda, global trade and security. However, looming over the summit, the Israel-Iran conflict, which is now in its fourth day and intensifying. Iran's state news agency says that it has been targeted by Israeli strikes.
As you just saw there, the attack happened while a live newscast was underway. You saw the news anchor essentially evacuate the studio very quickly. Earlier, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu urged Iranians to evacuate the capital as the death toll on both sides continues to grow. Iranian officials say that at least 224 people, most of them civilians, have been killed since Israel launched a wave of airstrikes on Iranian nuclear and military targets.
Israel says at least 24 people have been killed by Iranian missiles that penetrated its Iron Dome defense shield. Elena Treen is in Washington, but first let's go to Nick Payton-Walsh, who joins us from London. And Nick, walk our viewers through what we just saw happening on Iranian state television there as these two sides have increased the salvos against each other. Some reports suggesting that Iran is desperately looking for an off-ramp. Where do things stand?
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary to see the state broadcaster hit like that. Iranian officials suggesting this indeed was what it appears to be, which is an Israeli strike on that particular building, interrupting it, or interrupting certainly its journalists during that particular broadcast. We understand that this building may indeed be in District 3 in Tehran, and the Israeli Defense Force putting out a statement in Farsi, the Iranian language, telling people to evacuate that particular area hours prior to these images emerging. Now, we don't know the consequences of that particular attack, whether they were injured or dead as a result of it, but there have been increasing images emerging of strikes around Tehran. And indeed, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying they control the skies over western Iran and Tehran indeed. And in fact, Israel's Defense Minister, Israel Katz, clear a matter of hours prior to those explosions that you saw there, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the regime's mouthpiece would indeed be silenced. Not entirely clear if he was referring specifically to that state broadcaster, but certainly a coincidence that those words emerged just after the evacuation orders and prior to that particular explosion. But increasing reporting now and information we're getting about the sheer toll inside the capital and across Iran. Does it make it more likely, potentially, that Iran seeks a diplomatic solution? Well, they appear to have told regional mediators that they need Israel's strikes to stop before they can contemplate diplomacy. And indeed, they also might be suggesting they want to have their own counter-attacks get to a point where they feel they've taken adequate revenge or response or restored some kind of deterrent for Israel's extraordinary wave of strikes across Iranian military and other facilities over the past days. But here is some of the information we're gleaning about the human toll of what we've seen in the past 4 days inside Iran. Screams echo across the ordinary streets of Tehran. The horrors in Iran are harder to find video of, but it's hard to watch when you do. A deputy foreign minister posting this damage to his ministry. Several civilians injured, he said. Israel's defense minister clarified Monday he meant no harm to Tehran's residents when he said earlier the city would burn unless Iran's missiles stop. But many have seen flames already and are fleeing the capital. Nothing like this before in their lifetimes. In the western city of Kermanshah, state media posted images of the intensive care unit of a hospital damaged. The IDF told CNN they were, quote, not aware of any attack that happened on a hospital in Iran, end quote, and it's unclear if anyone was hurt. But numbers Iran's health ministry have given speak of just how wide-scale the Israeli onslaught has been. Over 200 dead, 90% civilians since Friday, they said. But each number, its own story. Many from the youth that the West sees as the hope for Iran's post-Ayatollah future. This is Tara Hajmiri,
dancing at the dentist, killed alongside her family, said state media. Also, Nilüfer Galevand, big in gyms and social media, aged 31, killed alongside her parents. And Pania Abbasi, a poet, aged 23, killed with her parents and brother. Her poem, The Extinguished Star, reads, "You and I will come to an end, somewhere. The most beautiful poem in the world falls quiet."
Now, there appear to be images now emerging of the aftermath of what seems to have been a strike on that Iranian state broadcast. I wonder if we can show them to you now, but I think in the hours ahead, potentially, given the scale of that evacuation order from District 3, maybe we'll see more images as it appears this tit for tat, the back and forth between Iran and Israel now heads into its 5th day.
Right, Nick Payton-Walsh, live for us there. Thank you so much. Elena, let me bring you in because we saw at the top of the bilateral meeting between President Trump and, of course, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, where they literally just sort of touched on what was happening with Iran and Israel right now. One of the things that President Trump said towards the end is that Iran wants to talk because they know that they're not winning this. But he would not answer a question. This is, I think, is key. He would not answer a question about what it would take for the U.S. to become more involved in this war. Just give us your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, these are actually questions I should note from our colleague Kit Marr here at CNN. Excellent line of questioning from her, really pressing the president on this. I think the most notable things are exactly what you said. One is that he admitted, we've seen some of this reporting, that Iranian intermediaries had reached out to the U.S. and an attempt and saying that they wanted de-escalation. He said, yes, they do. He said they should have tried to come to the table and talk to us sooner. He brought up that 60-day deadline that he had sent, a couple months ago in a letter to the Iranians saying that they had 60 days to negotiate with the United States a potential nuclear deal. He said they should have talked before that deadline was up. We had reported that that deadline was last Thursday when we started to see the strikes from Israel targeting Iran. But then he also was pressed by our colleague about what would it take for the United States to offer more than just defensive and intelligence aid to the Israelis. And he said he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to talk about military aid. Very notable from a president who often answers every single question and likes to be honest and transparent with the media. It was clear that he did not want to go there. Now, all of this comes, Zain and Biana, after we had reported that over the weekend, Israel had told the Trump administration that they had a window of opportunity where they believed that they could target and take out Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, the Ayatollah. And essentially what we had learned in our conversations with our sources at the White House and the broader Trump administration was that the president had directed his team to tell the Israelis that he opposed that he rejected that plan. And that is a big deal as well, because we have been told now repeatedly in our conversations that the president does not want to take U.S. aid and U.S. involvement in this conflict further. And the reason that he was rejecting that plan for a potential regime change was that, that to him would really bring this from a conflict to a potential full-out war. And that is exactly what the president is trying to avoid. Now, something he also said at the end of that bilateral meeting in Canada with the Prime Minister Carney is that he said that he's still open to having these talks with Iran. And we had heard this now. He said this yesterday when he was departing for Canada, and we've been hearing this in our private conversations. He does believe that there is a way to still salvage negotiations with the Iranians. And now he also believes that there is a way to try to have some sort of broader peace deal to really be an off-ramp to this war. Now, Nick smartly talked about this, but we've been hearing this as well in our conversations. It's very unclear whether there's actually an appetite for that, just given how much this has escalated in the region now between these two countries with these tit-for-tat strikes on the other countries. And so it's in a very precarious situation right now. I think what's really clear is that the president does not want the U.S. to be directly involved in anything more than trying to help the Israelis intercept some of these missiles coming from Iran and helping with intelligence, because he believes once they do that, this all changes. We could perhaps see Iranians try to target U.S. bases. These are all conversations that are going on behind closed doors. But again, it's very early on right now, and we haven't had any indication that any of those talks that the president says he is open to have actually begun.
Right, Elena Train, live for us there. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.